Hello viewers! Before you proceed in watching the rest of the video, please be warned that there will be spoilers about my opinion and review of episode Aigis. If you are still playing the DLC or have not touched the DLC and you are heavily against spoilers, I recommend to please come back at another time. Unless you do not mind spoilers and want to proceed anyway, then please sit back and enjoy listening to me honestly saying my thoughts about episode Aigis. Hello again viewers! Welcome to another game review video. Today we are gonna talk about the recent DLC that has been released by Atlus for their game Persona 3 Reload, in which we play as Aigis, the main character of the episode Aigis. We also got a new character named Metis. I like Metis. I think she's one of the most expressive characters out of everyone in your party. All of the other C's members come back also in this game, albeit some of the characters will not be joining your party at the start like Mitsuru, Junpei, and Koromaru. It's understandable due to the context of the game's setting being stuck in a dormitory and they cannot get out to procure supplies and everything. We'll get to the game's setting later on. Episode Aigis is basically the aftermath of the journey or the base game story. It is the story of grieving or mourning phase for all the C's members. I get that. However, it was hard for me to get into episode Aigis personally due to a lot of things, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. I almost ended up just dropping the DLC mid-game and just watched somebody else play through. But with sheer willpower and endurance, I finished the DLC and I am glad I did play the DLC anyway. However, there are also reasons why the video title is named like that, and I will share them. Let's start with the game's setting. Episode Aigis game setting is in the dormitory, past Polonia Mo, Velvet Room, the Desert of Doors which leads to the reverse Tartarus. And yes, I call it the reverse Tartarus because instead of going up, you keep going down. The dormitory is not a bad place as you can talk with the other C's members to hear their thoughts about the situation, and it adds to the sense of urgency and each individual's feelings for the current state that your party is in. It's also a place where you can find twilight fragments from time to time, which surprised me honestly. So looking around at every floor, nook and cranny for the dormitory is something you kinda need to do, especially after a memory door. Past Polonia Mo, it retains the police station for equipment, antique shop for better equipment, Aigis pharmacy for restorative and curative items, the memory shop for party member persona skill resets, and the flower shop. I'm sad that the club is not open, so much that I missed the fortune teller that increases the charge rate of my 3G gauge. I would say the police station and the antique shop are the most useful and convenient place to get new weapons, armors, and accessories, but they are not for me unfortunately. The police station is just the location for you to sell the monster materials and loot you got from the reverse Tartarus. The antique shop, you would think that this place would give you the best weapons, armors, and accessories. No. The most usage I got from the antique shop is just getting the growth 3 skill card so that I don't waste too much time leveling up multiple personas at once. That's it. That's the most important thing I did in the antique shop. I did get some of the equipment and items in there, but they were always shadowed by the loot you get from the Monad doors in the reverse Tartarus, in which I will get into later. Aigis pharmacy is the most useful shop in the past Polonia Mall because you get access immediately to all party healing items and curative items too. Most of the enemies, especially in mid-game, love to use skills that hit all of your party members that both damage and inflict status ailments. The restorative and curative items from Aigis pharmacy become useful because it basically gives your other party members access to support roles. I recommend to make use of the pharmacy more as it maximizes and make use of your money better than the police station and the antique shop. And of course the Velvet Room is back with both Igor and Elizabeth as residents. There is not much for me to say about the Velvet Room. It's the same old place you get your DLC personas, fuse for your new personas, and update your personas to the compendium. It's just straightforward. Don't get me wrong, it is one place you need to go back to. But due to the nature of the Velvet Room in Persona 3, there's not much you can do really here, unless you want to stay here hearing the good lady singing choir at your ears. The Desert of Doors. Coincidentally, the doors remind me of Trails in the Sky the Third. It is just that the doors are unlocked and grouped together in the same place. However, The doors do not really fascinate me that much as they are just doors to the reverse Tartarus, which is also the dungeon you play with 90% of the time. Not to mention, aesthetically the doors look all the same, so there were no distinct differences between the doors if you look at them in the desert, until you approach each door and they have different names and interiors once you get into. Forgive me for saying this, but I will call the dungeon inside of the doors as the reverse Tartarus. The reverse Tartarus is the place you will, majority of the time, go into. And yep, 90% of the time, you are just here, engaging in battles against shadows left and right, because you want to get your party to the level and power they had during the base game. Aside from that, I do not like though that the reverse Tartarus do not have much of a variety to them. Like some of the dungeons' aesthetics or designs were the same, but you just get into a lower level or floor of the reverse Tartarus. Without much of the dungeon design variety, it kinda bored me just traversing the dungeon, because I thought I keep seeing the same thing over and over again. However, I do like that the Monad doors are back here in reverse Tartarus, but with the twist and change, which I will get into also later on. That's all about the DLC setting. I'm going to proceed next to the DLC difficulty. I played the DLC immediately with hardest difficulty because this is one of the Persona games that can be played in the hardest difficulty comfortably from the beginning to end. I honestly enjoyed playing it in hardest difficulty because there were multiple moments of my party was in danger, or we just get team wiped because of me screwing it up, or I was surprised that the enemy actually hit harder than how I suspected them to be. I like how hardest difficulty keep you in check, as it makes you feel not cocky, or you will be forced or feel incentivized to keep upgrading your party gear from time to time and enhance Aigis personas. Seriously, if you have the DLC personas, just go for them. It will save you more time and do not have to do the whole persona compendium unlock thingy again in the Velvet Room, especially when you are just going for the story. Apart from all of that, if there is a part of the game where the difficulty really shines in, is when you fight your other party members near the end of the story. That part really changed my usual strategy because you are down to 2 party members, which is a huge difference for the usual gameplay you do throughout the DLC. Overall, I like the difficulty of the DLC. It is a sign of a good game or DLC if it can be played in the hardest difficulty at once from the beginning up to the end comfortably. Even if you are playing the game casually, as it is like the intended experience with the game having a bit of a challenge. I also like the difficulty name change from Merciless to Heartless. Adds a bit of a reference to Aigis too. I'm gonna proceed next to the gameplay now. The gameplay of episode Aigis is still 98% the same as it was like in the base game or the journey. The 2% difference is that you're playing Aigis as the main character, which has a pierce normal attack instead of the slash attack type from the previous main character. And when you are initiating combat with the shadows, you do not have to go near the shadow to ambush them, since Aigis has a ranged weapon on her hand. You can also attack the loot thingies in the dungeon while exploring. Not having to get near the shadows is convenient. Other than that, most things are the same. You use multiple personas and change into one of those once every turn. You find out the weaknesses of the enemies using focus persona analyze skill. You charge up the 30 gauge for each of the character according to their conditions while in a fight. You exploit the elemental weaknesses of the shadows to down them. You use all-out attacks to easily get shuffle time for post-combat bonuses. You choose Arcana cards to get whatever you need. Same old routine like in the base game. Yeah, there is not much for me to say about the gameplay of episode Aigis. It is just a copy and paste of the base game. I just get Vanadis, the DLC persona, because I was just curious about the story. Because when I got into the reverse Tartarus at start, I realized that our levels were back to 25. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna snowball most of the dungeon to save myself more time. Anyway, let us proceed to the changes in episode Aigis, at least the most notable ones. There are some notable changes in episode Aigis, in which I find welcoming and really good gameplay wise. We will go about them one by one. I have said this one already in the gameplay segment. You play as Aigis instead of Dorgood, and you have a ranged weapon to use now during dungeon exploration. So initiating combats against the shadows is much safer, as Aigis can shoot the shadows from a distance instead of going near the shadow and be able to hit them when in melee range. Playing as Aigis, especially during dungeon exploration, is quite nice. Next is Ambush. Ambush has a new upgrade for Aigis. The last upgrade of Ambush gives Aigis the ability to just crash into the loot thingies in the dungeon, so that you will not have to shoot them. It makes getting the loot in the reverse Tartarus faster, and you do not have to worry about slowing down. One of the greatest changes episode Aigis has is the upgraded rewards on the Monad doors and the choice to choose which difficulty of the Monad door you want to suffer yourself with. Since I had DLC personas to use right off the bat, I always choose the hardest Monad door, which is to the right. You can tell which Monad door is the hardest based on the number of the fires represented besides the Monad door. If you see 1 fire, that is the easiest. If you see 3 fires, that is the hardest. I recommend going to the hardest Monad door because the rewards are so good. It gives you a weapon, armor, accessory, items, and materials alike. And those gear that you get from the Monad doors are so much better than the ones you get from the police station and antique shop. That is why when you see a Monad door on the current floor that you are in, go for them. There is a bit of a challenge, but you will not regret going into them. Not to mention that clearing those Monad doors rebuild the entire floor map, and you can just keep exploring and go into the next lower floor immediately using the map shortcut button. Another change is how the duplication of the skill cards works in episode Aigis. Since in the DLC, your party cannot go out of the dorm to go to the shrine to conduct a skill card duplication. You do them instead in the Desert of Doors, but you unlock it later on in the game. Once you unlock the red clock in the Desert of Doors, that is the time you can start duplicating your skill cards. And yes, they do not take a day to duplicate the skill card because the calendar does not work in the DLC. With the price of 1 Twilight Fragment, you can ask the red clock to duplicate the skill card. Again, not really much of a change if you think about it, but at least you can duplicate a skill card immediately and do not have to wait another in-game day to duplicate another skill card. Here is another change, but specifically for the Velvet Room. There is no bonus experience points or level up that can be given to newly fused personas. And honestly, I think that is inconvenient, but at the same time, it does make sense. Since Aigis is not going around forming social links with different NPCs throughout the game. But yes, this made the persona fusion in episode Aigis kinda lackluster for me. And I mean, why do I have to fuse for so many personas again with Aigis, especially when I carried over a save data from the base game? But due to me playing the DLC in hardest difficulty, it comes with the caveat of not being able to carry over your persona compendium. Another change I want to talk about is the way you get your 3G skill unlocks and condition upgrades for your party members. The 3G skill unlocks after progressing in the story. The condition upgrades are when you view a short cutscene with your party members after giving them the item you got in the reverse Tartarus. You can get the items after defeating a main boss in the reverse Tartarus, though they require Twilight Fragments as they are in a locked chest. Another small change is you can get Twilight Fragments in both the dormitory and past Bologna Mall after progressing in the story. You just have to look for them in every nook and cranny. Those Twilight Fragments can help out in some way for you, I guess, or you can just ignore them. Up to you. Here is a sad change though. Club Escapade is closed in episode Aigis, which means you cannot talk to the fortune teller to have an increased charge rate of the 3G gauge while it comes. I think that is about all of the notable changes we have for episode Aigis. I might have missed a lot of new changes for this one, so if there are, I am sorry in advance. Anyway, we are gonna be moving on to the grind of episode Aigis. The grind. Of course, the grind. The grind in episode Aigis is the thing that you are gonna be doing throughout 90% of the game. If people ask if they do need to grind in episode Aigis, just say no. Because that is also the most gameplay you and everybody else gonna be doing when playing episode Aigis. Episode Aigis is pretty much a dungeon crawler game. Grinding is the gameplay basically. By the time you get to the last bosses of the DLC, you are already powerful enough that you're not gonna even bother grinding for extra anyway. If you look at it from a gameplay-wise perspective, it is good and convenient because you will just overwhelm the bosses easily. But story-wise perspective, you are gonna be taking a break from playing episode Aigis a lot because there is not much of a story to see. Because you have been grinding for way too long. I feel like the dungeon has too many floors. But again, this is Persona 3. Everybody just has to deal with it. That is all I'm gonna say about the grind. I think that pretty much sums it up about the grind of episode Aigis. Let us move on to the story and pacing. Here comes the story and pacing of episode Aigis. The story is pretty much straightforward. You are looking into the issue of why the Desert of Doors exists, why the reverse Tartarus or dungeons are back, why the shadows are back, who is that shadow figure you keep chasing in the dungeon, and then you get to the memory doors, showing the reason of how the party members manifested the persona and be able to save the world. No, I'm just kidding. To summarize it all up, the C's party is looking into who is the shadow figure that makes them chase it every time they go deeper into the reverse Tartarus. It is a no-brainer to come to a conclusion that the shadow figure that you are chasing is basically the main character of the base game or the journey. It has taken a form of the previous main character due to them being not able to move on, and you could see on the reactions and faces of our heroes that they are in denial. And they are in denial for like 80% of the story. The only time that they start to accept it is when you fight the shadow figure of the previous main character, which is the 14th boss of the DLC. After fighting the shadow figure, they got a key in which they can use to get out of the abyss of time. And with that key, they can either use it on the dormitory door entrance to get out of the loop, or they can use it to go back to the past by using the key on the previous main character's room in the dormitory. You would think that the choice is so obvious for everyone, but no. Everyone has their own opinion and feelings on the matter, on what to use the key for. Yukari wanted to go back into the past to try to save the previous main character from his sealed fate. Akihiko wanted to respect the decision made by the previous main character by accepting and moving on. These two party members are the ones that kinda throw the unity of the entire party off the bus. Another party member who is very vocal about the situation is Junpei, because he wanted to calm everyone down before making rash decisions, and honestly, I was on the side of Junpei there, at least in that cutscene. With Aigis on the other hand, she did not know yet what to do with the key because she was still torn about the whole thing, and I understand it for her case. But we all know that everyone being not on the same page is not something that we want for our heroes, right? So what happens later on is sides were starting to form up. Mitsuru joins Yukari for the team try to save the previous MC. Amada joins Akihiko for the team respect and accept the previous MC's decision and move on. Junpei and Koromaru were neutral about the entire thing, so somehow, you still fight them later on instead of teaming up with Aigis and Metis. Metis, we all know she's gonna team up with Aigis 100%. Fuka was kinda lost along with Aigis. I mean, who would want to see a rift in their group after everything they have been through? Aigis, Metis, and Fuka fights everyone later on for the Battle of Ideals. For the first two fights against Akihiko's team and Junpei's team, Aigis still did not know what to do at the time. Until the end of her fight with Junpei's team, Aigis only realizes everything that she has to do after she saw Metis cry. And yes, Metis cried, for a lovable machine that she is. At this point, you realize who Metis really is. And then Aigis fight against Yukari and Mitsuru, with Yukari fully intended to win because she really wanna go back in the past to try to save the previous main character. But of course, you as the player are not allowed to lose, right? So we won against Yukari and Mitsuru. Aigis later on freed everyone from the torch prisons. However, instead of just blindly getting out of the abyss of time or the prison that they are in, Aigis insisted to everyone that they find out the truth of why the previous main character left them. The party was in unity once again to try pursuing the truth. Yes, Persona 4 reference, and for some reason, Metis said that they have to go through all of the doors except the previous MC room's door before they can get out to pursue the truth. I still do not get why going into the past Polonia Mall door made them go into the Desert of Doors instead, just to see another huge ominous door appeared in the middle of the desert, with some sort of darkness leaking out from the door. I'm still weirded out why they had to go through the past Polonia Mall door. Atlas could have just shown a hint or a bit of an earthquake or light flash happened indicating that something has changed in the Desert of Doors. But you know what? They are in the abyss of time. Nothing makes sense anymore. And so the game gives you a last chance to prepare for the final boss. So I did go back grinding for like 2 hours because I was looking for that 30 gauge charge rate increase Arcana card. That Arcana card was so elusive, I tell you. Then it happened. The party entered the huge door in the desert, and we see the meme itself. Previous main character becomes the door kun. Cross in the middle of the huge golden door serving as the seal for Nyx. I respect that the party acknowledges that Nyx is not entirely evil and does not really want for humans to suffer, but you have to understand that there is a reason for Nyx being the final boss of the base game. Trying to redeem something that you have defeated and once served as a danger to all of humanity is a stretch, at least for me. But what is the real reason why our previous main character becomes a seal for that huge golden door? Here's the reason.
It's full of humanities. Just as I thought. The purpose of his seal. It's not meant to hold back Nyx. It's to prevent something from reaching her.
What do you mean?
That giant monster. It's not a shadow. It's a mass of the worst traits and feelings from every person's heart. Deep down, everyone is calling for Nyx.
That can't be. There was a time when I also wished for death. It's probably true that everyone has a part of them secretly yearning for it. The only thing that separates the living from the non-living is death, the greatest equalizer.
I think I understand. When you feel like your life has no meaning, the thought of death can be comforting. And that subconscious desire is so strong, it could even create a monster like this. I guess that's just how it is these days.
Erebus, or the final boss, is basically the monster created by the humanity's dark thoughts. Thoughts like death is a salvation as it will save you the pain of suffering, losing your loved ones, basically an escape for everything. And Fate thinks Nyx is the answer to that. With that story being told, it makes you think that Nyx is not the danger all along, but it was the humanity's dark thoughts. That's what the seal is guarding against of. Our previous main character is basically protecting Nyx from humanity's dark thoughts. This is like a paradox if you ask me, because Nyx is a danger. Humanity's dark thoughts are also a danger. And our previous main character is the only seal or wall that is separating them from one another. When you think about it, for how long the seal can guard against Nyx and the humanity's dark thoughts? Because at some point in the Persona story universe, that seal can be destroyed at any time, and another character will have to sacrifice again to become the second seal. So I fought Erebus, the final boss, and granted that I am overpowered at this point, he was not that hard to deal with, but as it should be. You see, like Junpei said during the cutscene, Erebus does not stand a chance against them, as Erebus is just a collection of dark thoughts all mixed up together with no coherent comprehension and smart thinking. That thing is supposed to be easy, whether you play it on the easier difficulties. I do not have to complain about the final boss being easy because that is how it should be. So the party has defeated Erebus. They are gonna use the true key in the dormitory entrance door to get out of Abyss of Time. So they did, but before that, Velvet Room. And one of my favorite moments in Persona games is when Igor thanked the main character for being a wonderful guest and saving the day. albeit this time, it is just not Aigis who goes into the Velvet Room, but all of the other C's members too. That was so good in my opinion. As Igor was taking the party for all of their efforts, Aigis was feeling fulfilled and content, and also feeling tired. I mean, they have been fighting for a long time. I like how in the game, she is much more human than a machine. The game kinda plays with your feeling thinking that she's gonna die, but not really. She was just mentally and emotionally tired, that's all. And then some few final cutscenes showing the party moving out from the dormitory, with Aigis also making the first step in her changed life by continuing to live alongside her friends, to which is a beautiful development and a nice ending to the story. Now here's the thing, that is the entire story and climax of the DLC, which mostly happens in the end of the game. Mind you, the end. So, what do you do in the beginning and middle of the game? Like I said before, you are just literally grinding just to prepare for the fights against your party members and the final boss fight. This is where I see the issue in the pacing of the story. It was so hard to get into the game due to the less context and story to work with during the beginning and middle of the game. There were so many times I just wanted to play something else, and I often took breaks from playing episode Aigis. But I had toughened out and sheer-willed myself that I have to finish this DLC. The pacing of the story DLC is not good. It is not really engaging to me, at least in my opinion. Maybe it would have worked out better if episode Aigis was released at the same time with the base game or the journey. And they could have added more story cutscenes or context to work with, such as the party talking more about the situation or some background story after the previous main character died. Like what they have been doing, what the stakes, at least something noteworthy for us to get into. It was really hard for me to pay close attention to the memory doors or some few story cutscenes. If only the DLC was not too much of a dungeon crawler, then I would have liked the DLC more, but it is just not it. Anyway, that's all about the story and pacing review from me. Let's move on to the music. Don't get me started with the music. The new advantage battle theme of episode Aigis, namely Don't as in Do Not, is good. I love it. It adds to the character of Aigis and the vibes during the battle is nice. I like how the intro lyrics of the song of Mass Destruction is also added to Don't. A good reference to Mass Destruction for sure. It's also nice that Lotus Juice and Azumi Takahashi are back with this new banger. Having Azumi in the remake is quite nice. I welcome her wholeheartedly, and having Lotus Juice gives you that same familiarity you once had with the OG Persona 3, and with him still in the remake, so good. Of course, the answer or episode Aigis version of Mass Destruction is back, but you mostly hear it during Monad door battles since you cannot really ambush the enemies there. But Mass Destruction is still good. Azumi and Lotus also sings this one. Hell yeah, baby! The Blind Yali for Persona 3 Reload is so good. I love listening to it during the beginning of the DLC. Like, it is a remix or new version of the dormitory theme. Not to mention, the theme kinda reminds me of Persona 4. How cool is that? The Abyss of Time soundtrack that plays out during the dungeon exploration, I do not like it except for the Last Door series, which is the Empyrean one. Abyss of Time just made me sleepy and uninterested during exploration, as it adds to that dreadedness of the DLC atmosphere. Maybe it was meant to be that way, but personally, it kinda did not work out for me. Good thing you can set your dungeon music manually in the options menu. I love another music soundtrack they use, the one you hear during the companion fight against your party members, Heartful Cry. It was such a personal fight, and there's a lot of personal stakes on this one. Not to mention, you getting hammered by your party members was something I did not expect to be so brutal and thrilling at the same time, especially with this music banging in the background. Persona, as in just Persona, is one of my most favorite soundtracks. I mostly used this one during the beginning and middle of the DLC, and kept me going for hours by listening to this one. It adds to that grooviness and sense of urgency at the same time when I was coursing through the dungeons. Lastly, Darkness. I love the final boss theme. Like the soundtrack is not even for the final boss. It is basically your party's team that plays out when your whole party is on unison and is just ready to defeat that enemy. It does not make you feel that the final boss is a hard enemy, but it's just another enemy you have to defeat. But your party is so hyped up and ready to go. Like this soundtrack just tells you, this will be just another day in the office. Alright, I guess that's it for my basic music opinion. I'm gonna do something different and I wanna talk about the things that I did not do. There are a couple of things I did not do in the DLC. These are Elizabeth fusion requests, Persona fusions that unlock Aigis either 30 skills and the Joker fight. I will give you the reasons why I did not do it for each item. Elizabeth fusion requests. The reason why I did not do them is because it will just take time for me to do it all. I mean, there are surely a lot, but due to the nature of the DLC's pacing and gameplay, you do a gameplay grinding majority of the time in the DLC, and I thought there was really no need to bother with it. Plus, the DLC did not really prevent me from progressing much into the game, because even without the rewards I get from Elizabeth fusion requests, I was able to finish the game. Sure, it might save me more time in certain fights with the help of those, but at the same time, I would have to go out of my way also to do those requests, in which it also takes time anyway. So yeah, there is my reason. Next is the Persona fusions. To be fair, I did some Persona fusions, but mostly just to get Personas that have the highest level elemental skill attack. That's it. So like I only do it for Satan, Saturnus, Vishnu, etc. I did not also even fuse for Odin, since I just settled with Izanagi. The DLC Persona instead, but gave him Zeodyne and Mazeodyne using skill cards. Sure, I might have optimized all of my Personas by doing many fusions, but again, it will take me more time than I'm supposed to. I mostly use Persona fusions now if I certainly need to min-max my Personas, if I really do need to. Next is why I did not do the Joker fight. I know Joker is in the game, but there are conditions in the game to actually unlock this super boss. I looked it up online and they said that you have to defeat all of the Monad door bosses, but I feel like I did all of the Monad door bosses in the dungeon unless the game is talking about another Monad door. But honestly, I don't think I'm gonna bother with Joker. If they made him mandatory to fight, that would have been a different story. But since he is optional, I will not go out of my way to beat him. Other content creators or Persona veterans can make do with Joker. I am a filthy casual Persona 3 gamer. Sorry, Joker. Okay, that is it for the things that I did not do. Next is the things I wish the DLC had. Let's get into it. I know the episode Aigis DLC wanted to stay faithful to the answer episode of Persona 3 FES. However, I wish Atlas added some stuff more into episode Aigis. For example, I wish they added Takaya, Jin, and Chidori as another shadow figures you will fight during some of the story segments, or some of the unique full moon bosses in some way or another. Because honestly, there is not much of a variety when it comes to the first 13 bosses you fight in the episode Aigis. The only time you get unique bosses is starting from the 14th boss, which is the Shadow MC, your companions, and Erebus. The first 13 bosses you fight are just shadows you get to also fight in the reverse Tartarus, to which you will also see them later on as regular shadows you fight against. So yeah, I guess I needed more of variety when it comes to the story or mandatory bosses. This next wish I have is a bit nitpicky, but I wish in the Velvet Room, they let you access the menu or even just the Persona category, and let you dismiss or delete the Personas that you do not need anymore to free up Persona stock for newly fused Personas. This seemed also weird because in another Atlas game, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, in that game, the World of Shadows let you dismiss or delete demons that you don't want or need, and you don't have to go out of it just to do that. In Persona 3 Reload, even here in the DLC, it's sometimes a pain to fuse for new Personas on the spot because most of the time, you have a full stack of Personas. I wish in future Persona games, they will finally let you dismiss Personas while in the Velvet Room. Again, a wish. This one is related to the Velvet Room. Another wish I wanted. I wish it lets you fuse for new personas even without the required personas in your stock. Like, if you don't have the required personas in stock, the game will automatically get it for you in the compendium and charges you with the required money as well to conduct the fusion, because honestly, this is one of the reasons I do not like Persona Fusion in general. I have to go out of my way to search it up online. What is the required and specific personas I need to fuse for this persona that I do not have yet? It's like fusing for personas is a whole another game whenever I am in the Velvet Room. It is so weird that the accessibility options or convenience a player could have in the Persona games are non-existent. And then you have another game like Shin Megami Tensei in which it is so convenient to do the demon fusions and everything. Listen, I do not mind remakes or remasters of the game, but at least include a really good quality of life changes. I wish they would do that for Persona 6 or even Metapod, the new upcoming game of Atlas. I mean, if there are even personas or demons to work with there. Another wish for the DLC is that make the save data carryover from Persona 3 Reload to Episode Aigis actually useful. Because the only thing that carryover data useful for the DLC is the Persona Compendium. Great, right? It is not if you are playing Episode Aigis in Heartless. Like, it defeats the whole point for me to have a save data carryover anyway. And I even played the base game in Merciless difficulty too. The difficulties I have to go through. They should have at least let you keep your weapons, armors, accessories, items, money, and the levels of your party members, including Aigis. It is kinda weird that DLC tells you that you can use your completed save data from the base game, and once you carry them over to Episode Aigis and play it on hardest difficulty, you basically get nothing, and that is a bummer in my opinion. Well, that is all for me for the things I wish the Episode Aigis DLC had. Well folks, I think that about wraps it up for my review of Persona 3 Reload DLC, Episode Aigis. My rating for the DLC is 3 out of 5. No pun intended. I feel neutral about the DLC, to be honest. I cannot say it is good, but at the same time, I cannot say it is a bad story too. The answer from me is Episode Aigis is okay. I understand the DLC stayed faithful to the original, the answer from the Persona 3 FPS. Like I said before, there were multiple times I took a break from playing the DLC as it did not engage or compelled me enough to keep going with it, despite with the new characters to play as and a continuation to Persona 3 Reload story. Sadly, I cannot really give this DLC a rating of above 3 personally. However, I respect this game's content. I think it tried to do something different and really expand based on the Persona 3 base game story. Still, a massive thanks to Atlas for releasing the DLC and giving us a new content to play with. Thanks to them, I got to experience a whole another story. I hope they keep doing more of these story DLCs, and I wish they would also add some of the wishes or conveniences we can have for our future Persona games. Yeah, that's all from me folks. I think I have pretty much shared my opinions and thoughts about Episode Aigis. For all what it's worth, I enjoyed it when I got to the end. Yeah, that's just it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me, and thank you for taking the time to just drop by in this video. What did you guys think about Episode Aigis or the DLC of Persona 3 Reload? Was it great for you or okay? Again, thank you folks for taking the time. I appreciate you, and I hope you will have a wonderful rest of the day or night. Goodbye folks, goodbye.
The moonlight all night long, how these plain and simple scenes get painted so vividly by you.
Also, I am going to break your heart using 7 words. Episode Aigis has no new game plus.